For the second part of some curved lines videos, I'm going to show you how to do something very similar to this. It's building upon the part 1 video where I did this, dividing boxes, making curves, and then mirroring them in 2D, and then mirroring them in 3D. I'm going to go with a much simpler curve right now for my 3D curve. And just to show you a little behind the scenes work, right, I did a little test of my setup I'm planning to use, a fairly loose test. It took me about 2-3 minutes, and it just to make sure that I liked the proportions that I was using on the page. Right, practice helps a lot to make sure what you're about to do, what you're going to spend more time on, turns out better. So I'm going to use this grid that I made here as an underlay, just like I did for that test over there. And on the video, I imagine you can barely see the underlay. I won't need it for long. I just need it for a little bit to get some major lines in there for this curve. Just marking my little reference points if I ever need to use this underlay again for this sketch. Check in. What did I use? I used a vertical right about here. Right. I use a horizontal somewhere right there. Again, I really like the way that first one turned out, so I'm trying to duplicate it as much as possible from here to there, to there, to there, to there. Right, give myself some dots to aim for. Also, put little arrows just if the lines start to get confused, what are my reference lines from my perspective, and what are just some random lines that I sketched. So if I go from, say, here, I don't have any references for this one underneath, so I am going to, so I'm not exactly tracing a line, but I do want to make sure that these are in perspective with what I've set up here. So here's this. Right about there. Give myself a vertical, something like this, right here. It's going to go back into space, something like this. This one has a reference close by to it, not quite on it though. Just below that. So now I'm going to use this as my little box to duplicate. I have no specific reference behind this one now, just trying to follow the perspective. So something like that. From corner through midpoint. There, a vertical reference close by right there, run my hand over it, help me get the muscle memory of where that should be, right about there. Pull this back into space, there, pull this back into space, like there. I think it'd be nice to duplicate it, maybe something like this. Yeah. So let's go vertical right there. And where this intersects, pull it back here. And I do have a reference line for that one, so that's much easier to trace. Pull this back into space this way, follow my perspective. So right here, and pull this one up there. So I want to go from here to here. Pull that over. Pull this one straight up so you can see it there, and this one goes back following that. All right, so now I've set up my two boxes in perspective. I don't need this grid underneath anymore. I have enough reference on the page. All right, so this one, I'm not going to worry about pulling a curve from something 2D and duplicate it into 3D. We're just going to make a curve here and then pull it over in space. So let's have a little fun with this because we're saving ourselves some time from not having to duplicate. I think something like that. Something like that. All right, this kind of bell shape right there. I want to duplicate that in space on this first face, right, over in that direction. So let's pull this up to there. So that point where it intersects this one is my first reference point, and this where it goes to here it's pretty lucky. It's pretty close to like the almost high point of where this comes out before it starts to come back in. So let's pull those two over in perspective. For me, it's easier if I rotate the page this way. Pull this over in perspective. All right, I extend the line well beyond just to feel confident that yes, it feels like it's in perspective. It's going to the same vantage point as the rest of my setup right there. Same thing with this one. It's going to stay pretty close to that one. Again, even a little arrow there at the end. So means this and this one right here. So there's one point, this and this one right here, and there's another point. They're almost vertical to each other. It'd be nice to have something else up here. It'd be nice to have something else down here. So where up there? Maybe right here at this point. So to get that, I think we can go from this intersection point. No, if I make an angle from here through there, I have to make a little box to figure out exactly where that one is on the other side. How does I figure out how to save myself time? How to save myself time. If I go from here through there, I'd still have to make a box. You know, let's do this one. We'll make a box right here. A little small box. So from here to there. Right. Now if I go vertical, so this is my line right there. It's so close to that little dot right there, but not quite. So let's finish up our little X right there. Pull this over into space to find the midpoint there. pull it all the way through just to feel confident about the perspective. So from there through there, right there, again just shy of that previous setup, pull vertical right there. So this wants to go up there, from here to here. And now I can pull a line perspective over, and where it crosses that line, that is where this curve is. So this line right here, this line right here, this point right here. So I can go, like a curve will come like this and down something. Again, I want another point down here. This will be easier. I'll pick a point where I can go all the way to the edge. So I can just come out to here. Go back in perspective where it hits this edge there. Connect those points right there, and where it intersects, pull that one over. So pull this one over and drop down a little bit. It started to diverge, so I'm seeing it intersects this line right here. Probably intersects just a little higher. So there's the small error, maybe puts it right there. So now I have the beginning, this point, this point, this point, this point, and then the end. So it curves out, curves in a little bit, curves out, and comes in and through that. So it looks something like this, this, and that. And probably doesn't come that far there, so it kind of comes like that. Okay, so let's make that a little thicker. So it comes out like that, comes in like that. So there is that curve on that side. Here's the original curve right here. Now I'm going to take this and duplicate it on this back plane over here. Let's make that just a little easier to see. So we have the front face of a cube right here. Got this curve is on, and I have mirrored. And I want to duplicate it to the back face of this cube. Just right here. Again, we already have a few reference points. We got the top up here, which is the midpoint. We got the two places where it ends. And we have some crosses right here that we can duplicate and just pull lines back into space. So, for instance, if I pull from here up to there, again, this line right here is this line right here. So let's do that in green. All right. This line is this line. So where my curve intersects that line, I just need to pull a line back in space following my perspective. and where it intersects, that is where this curve is on this one. Now we have a whole series of these lines. If I pull this one back into space and perspective, here's my midpoint on this line right here. So I go to this over here. Essentially what I just did is, I'm going to start off with green. Here's the midpoint here. Here's the midpoint line here. I did this right here, is this right here, and then where it intersects that, this, I pull that back into space, following the rest of my perspective. It's kind of, there's a little, looks kind of like right there is where it intersects it, right? So this point and this point, I have them back in space. I also want to get this point down here. Again, I pull this line now back into space. And right there, right, that's where this height is, which gives me where this angle is. So from here to there, and that gives me the intersection point. So if I pull this back into space, following my perspective, right about there. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 points for duplicating this. So it kind of comes out, swings in, and comes there. So it comes out, swings in, and then comes through there. Right. So there is that curve in the back. By using some of these front references, and we can do the same thing in this little area over here. It's going to be harder because there are so many lines going on already. It definitely helps, right, that I've used the color pens to differentiate them. In the future, you might just be sketching with a pen and it will be harder. But you keep doing this, it will get easier to keep track of your different lines. You can also start to layer sheets on top of each other to help yourself not get too lost. So I am this line right here and this line right here. That point, pull it back into space, following my existing perspective, which is this line right here and this line right here. I sort of go in between them. So following that to this point right there. Here's that point. Now I want this line right here. So I have that one, right? This line right here is this line right here, where this curve intersects that line. If I pull that back into space, following my existing perspective, here's this one right there. This is a little below or a little above that. Yeah, right in between. Again, this is why I'm use these arrows to help keep track of what direction these are going in. So it's this point, crossing that line right there is this point right here. And one of the reasons I can tell this is correct, right, is because this is roughly vertical to that one, in the same way that my very first set was, and even this one right here, they're kind of vertical to each other on the page. That shouldn't change too much, no matter what angle we look at them from. So we got a little curve out here, curve in, and then go down to there. But we still have this point that we can use as a reference, so pull that back into space, like that. This one here at an angle. And then where it intersects that one, pull it back into space like that. So it's that point right there. So one, start here, go through here, here, right there, and there. So it kind of comes out like a bell shape, in, a little bit, and then it comes through those points. Just rotate the page because it's easier to draw that curve that way. And there's what that looks like back there. All right, let's put that in a deep purple line so we can clearly see all of those. All right, so this line right here in the front is our original one. Here's the first one we mirrored. Here's the one we pulled back from the very first one into space. And this one right here, we pulled back into space that way. I can connect them, right, like this, and like this right here. And at a tangent point, if I draw a line tangent to the curve here and the curve there, it should fall back in space, and that is the outline of what that looks like. So there's taking a curve in 3D and extruding it back to make a 3D form that if we just do a rough quick sketch on the bottom here, right, kind of looks like this thing. You might be asking, but Nathan, we spent all this time doing this and you just did that one. Well, this one's nowhere near as accurate as this is, because this curve doesn't really look like that one there. It probably should have come out more, which is why we do all of this over here to be sure, to be accurate. Once you do enough of these, it'll help you with your loose and freehand sketching and getting that to be more accurate.